All right, hello YouTube. This is Darth Kilhoun channel with my second The Dark Council podcast. It's been a year? No, nearly a year because I did my first one shortly after the Russian invasion. And tonight I have a new guest on called Trad Raider. He appears on the Monarchists of America podcast with me occasionally, and I wanted to bring him on to discuss the topic of the German Reichsbürgers and the contention over the legitimacy of the German Bundesrepublik.
Howdy. Let's get this going.
All right. Any introductions, any shillings?
On the pages I have, or anything else?
Do you have like a Twitter I could add later? Or
Oh,
like a
yeah,
YouTube
I
channel?
do. I have YouTube, but I don't actually post anything on there. I've got Twitter, which is, my username is the same as on here, Trad Raider. And I'm on Discord on the MOA server, on a couple other servers, but usually people don't contact me through there. Mostly it's just Twitter that people find me on there, so I'll send you the link to put it in the description. But yeah, Trad Raider on Twitter.
All right, I'll put that in the description right after the stream. But let's get on to this topic because recently there was the media is calling it a coup d'état. Obviously, it wasn't an attempted coup d'état or a putsch, if you're using German, in Germany. So there was claimed to be a putsch by the Reichsbürgers led by Prince Heinrich the 13th. And he's a prince of a very tiny principality in Thuringia that's pretty insignificant. But I mean, it's let's just say it's pretty comical that the German state could mobilize 3,000 police officers because 25 people said that the Bundesrepublik is illegitimate and the German Empire is the last legitimate government of Germany, which I actually subscribe to as well.
Yeah, I do agree on that point. And like we saw when we were doing the MOA podcast, I forget what news source it was, but they opened it up with calling back to the beer hall putsch and being like, almost 100 years ago, it's all kind of just the media being on about right-wing movements and how horrible and Nazi-esque they are, despite the fact that most Reichsbürgers have nothing to do with the Nazis.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's kind of cringe whenever the Nazi Reichsbürgers come in and use imperial symbols because they were very much anti-monarchists, the Nazis.
Yeah, and they just used it to be like, oh, this is German symbols, not German monarchy. You've got them corrupting those symbols. You've got the left going along with it. It's all just a big facade to discredit monarchism and the German Empire.
Mm-hmm. I mean, there's a lot of historical writers that try to say that Wilhelm II was like the prelude of Hitler, that he cemented.
The anti-Hitler, meaning ANTE Hitler, the pre-Hitler, I guess you could say. Yeah, it's bull. He wasn't even for the war. He was just for World War I, just supporting Austria. But beyond that, there's no connection other than social conservatism between Nazism and monarchism. They're directly opposed forces, and the comparison just annoys me, to say the least.
Mm-hmm. I mean, the only thing you could tacitly say is Adolf Hitler and Wilhelm II were anti-liberal, and but
that's not exactly an agreeable point. Communists are anti-liberal, monarchists, Nazis, libertarian, anarcho, whatever the hell's all anti-liberal. That's like saying you're just not in the status quo. Everyone's anti-liberal. That's not a share point.
Mm-hmm. I mean, but back then, being anti-liberal was actually significant. Today, it's just kind of because it is the world order instead of it being one of many contending world orders.
Exactly.
But you have a few articles, so I'm going to allow you to share your screen here.
Alrighty, so yeah, first one's just I think we should actually start with this one, the 2022 Germany coup d'etat, in air quotes, plot. So this is the Wikipedia drawn up thing for it. And so firstly, we can already see right-wing terror group, which not accurate. But continuing on, planned a coup d'etat in Germany, monarchist government, German Reich. Continue down, it's 3,000 German police officers. They won't even specify the number. They just said they have arrested 25.
Mm-hmm.
So let's
think
see.
I think the German state probably won't release any information on that.
Because then it would make them look bad for mobilizing 3,000 German police. They
you
probably
know,
even... Go ahead.
Oh, I was about to say, imagine those 3,000 German police officers being deployed against all these, like the Bremen raping of German women and all that stuff.
Oh, dude.
They could have been used for because the German state, like they protect certain classes of people that are their allies, and
Mm-hmm.
I kind of say like the Bundesrepublik is the anti-German government.
It really is. And like when you have like, I know she's no longer in power, but like Merkel, when their government policy for mass rapes and homicides from immigrants, when there's what their responses to that is just stay inside, just be careful, just walk in safe neighborhoods. But then when they have 25 people who are uncontent with the German government, they have to mobilize 3,000 police force, probably GSG 9 German special, because it says special forces. So they probably GSG 9. So they release their special anti-terrorist forces against, like it feels like feds. It feels like these like even if these aren't just feds who got arrested, it's still stupid that they need to mobilize that much police against the freaking. It's just annoying.
Against
But,
against an elderly prince and like 24 others.
Well, that's what the German government does. Their best thing that they can do is try old people in court for existing. Like of course there was a Nazi guard who was hardly a kid when World War I went down, or World War II went down, and he literally was just a guy who stood in a tower and looked out to make sure no one was attacking. That's all he did. They tried him in court when he was like 114 or something, and then sentenced him to life in prison for crimes against humanity. He's an old man. He's not going to cause any more harm.
Oh my God.
But they're not even trying, like immigrant criminals who are going around raping German women. No, it's just these, 114-year-old Nazis and this old German prince that's from a principality in the middle of nowhere. It's just, like, you can tell that they have a political agenda with who they try in court.
Mm-hmm. And it's completely ideological. I mean,
100%.
I say this like I call the German Bundesrepublik the American occupational regime because it was set up by the United States to try Germans that were, say, a little too spicy for America's likings.
And
to perpetuate the liberal world order within Europe as well.
Exactly. It was meant to be kind of the assurance post World War II that Germany would be a good little democratic ally of the West.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but let's read through this.
So it starts off talking about prosecutors reported about 50 organizers from Reichsbürger, cluster far right, which reject the current liberal democratic basic order. They call it the basic order as though it's like common sense, which is annoying.
Mm-hmm.
And are associated with violence and anti-Semitism. There's the Nazi link that they want to throw in there.
I mean, I'm going to say this just for like being diplomatic to them. I mean, Wilhelm II in his later years was a little suspicious of the JQ, but he wasn't, let's just say, fully anti-Semite.
Yeah, and it's still, I still think that this is maybe out of context, maybe a fabrication. Yeah, this whole Wikipedia is a hit piece. Continuing. Included QAnon followers and COVID-19 deniers, so all the people they want to link with a coup. Because it's like how in America you see someone who goes up and like shoots up a mall with all of the guns that the government wants banned. It's like just group in the followers that you don't like and then say, oh, they're linked to a coup and then make it illegal.
Yep.
The group was divided into areas of responsibility. Federal Republic, 52 suspects, and arrested 25 of them. So that's pretty standard. Group also included several former members of KSK, German Special Forces, including a former lieutenant colonel of the paratrooper battalion of the Bundeswehr, Rüdiger von Pescator. I don't know if I pronounced that correctly. My German's not great.
Yeah.
GSG9 search.
Let me
Go ahead.
try. I took a little bit of German. Yeah, that's fairly close.
Yeah, that's
very close.
That's what I thought. Searched a KSK site of the Graf Zeppelin barracks. Wait, so they literally raided like an actual military site of. So I'm assuming they implicated soldiers in this.
Oh yeah,
Because
they
it would make
always
sense.
do.
It would make sense that German soldiers tend to be more right wing, as most soldiers are.
So I'm going to bring this point up. Even the Stasi in East Germany, they reported on this issue that they could only recruit right wingers into the Volksarmy. It's like
surprising no one.
Yeah, the majority of the Volksarmy were like vivid right wingers in the communist East Germany.
Well, and yeah, and speaking of Stasi, a bunch of German officials in the current government are ex-Stasi, and no one cares.
Mm-hmm. Or Angela Merkel is actually a former member of the East German Communist Party as well.
Which I mean,
nobody brought that up.
Yeah, because they don't want to address the stuff like, oh, they were part of a party that killed thousands of people, oppressed millions. They don't want to go on to that, but continuing. Rüdiger was supposed to lead the military arm of the group. What, the 25 dudes? The federal public prosecutor describes von Pescatore along with Heinrich Reuss as a ringleader. Von Pescatore is said to have tried to recruit police officers and soldiers. Yeah, that's where. I mean, that sounds right. That's where you find a right-wing base.
Also, I bring this up a few years ago. There actually was about a quarter of all the German KSK were discharged because guess what? The majority of them were monarchists and Reichsbürgers because the people who joined special forces. I mean, this is the same in the United States.
Oh yeah, like if you look at the SEALs and you look, Delta, whoever, they're all very right wing. They're all voting Republican. They're all like, it's not a surprise. The military tends to instill conservative values. When you're doing masculine tasks, you tend to become more traditionally masculine, hence more right wing.
I say the more estrogen you have in your body, the more right wing you are. I mean, not estrogen.
I was about to say the more estrogen.
the more estrogen is actually you're on the left. Then
you're gonna get quoted out of context for that.
Yes. If somebody clips me, I'll make a response video to it.
Continuing. Members also included a former Oberst, Maximilian Ida, former criminal police officer Michael Fritsch from Hanover, a former Oberst Peter Werner from Bayreuth, who started a business for survival training. Again, not a surprise. A lawyer.
Also, for context for the audience, an Oberst in German means colonel. So
high-ranking military officer.
Like a regimental or brigade commander in the United States Army.
Yeah, and well, if you're finding these colonels, you'd think that the German military, the Bundeswehr, might have some right-wingers in it, if it's a bunch of colonels and, captains of the police as well.
I mean, in the United States, there was I remember this, it was actually like a decade ago, but there was a Navy officer that was discharged because he's a Catholic integralist.
Oh my God. I think discharging based on political ideology is, at least in these nations, is a horrible idea.
Mm-hmm.
Like when you're discharging your best people because they are the way they are, you're going to get fewer good soldiers and officers.
I mean, I've seen this firsthand because I'm enlisted in the Army Reserve. And I would say some of their best men refuse the COVID shot.
And
of course, and of course, that's a political sign that you're not compliant with the regime. So, like, yeah, most of these cream of the crop have been purged. And also, the very small recruitment pool already in the United States got shrunken because most people that want to join the military don't trust the shot. So,
Well, and it's very interesting because I always hear the phrase, like, when someone says that they support the military and the Second Amendment, they say, well, the military won't come and take your guns. The thing is, they're not going to take the military as it is to take your weapons. They're going to take the military once they've purged it of the people who would stop. They're going to follow orders. They're going to find the people who will and put them in positions to do so. Anyway, where were we? Lawyer Tim Paul Gorgas from Hanover and a surgeon Melanie Ritter from Lower Saxony. Malsak Winkelmann, a lawyer and judge in the state of Berlin, is said to have designated it as future Minister of Justice. She was a member of the German Bundestag from 2017 to 2021 for Alternative für Deutschland and was arrested on December 7th, 2022. So one of the 25, I'd assume. The group included at least one other AfD politician, Christian Wendler, an AfD former Stadtrat, local councillor from Ulbenhau in the Saxon Ore Mountains. Okay, yeah, it seems kind of southern and western Germany tends to be a bit more conservative than the east, which is not surprising considering east-west Germany.
Well, the East also has like this phenomena because actually it's funny. East Germany did allow like a right-wing party that was like made up of former Nazis. So, and in fact, they even were technically in government. Like they had power in East Germany for like one election term.
Before they put a stop to that.
Yeah, I think it was like in the 1960s or 70s. I'd have to look it up, but they held power at least for one period. So it's like there is like the more, we'll just say, third positionist opinion in East Germany, while then the more traditionalists tend to be in the former Western Germany.
Yeah. Your mic good? It sounds like you're moving it around a lot.
Oh, it is? Well, I just decided to stand up.
There it is. Okay. Moving on. According to Der Spiegel, the Patriotic Union group had an unusual amount of money with which they had bought weapons as well as satellite phones. One of the properties raided by the police, hunting lodge Weidemannscheil in Bad Lobenstein, which belongs to the alleged ringleader Royce, serves as the business address for several companies linked to the London-based asset management firm Heinrich XIII, Prince Royce, and Anderson Peters Limited. So a shell company, it's essentially. This is the part I'm interested in reading. The ideology. Let's see how they describe it. The alleged aim of the group was to establish a monarchic government similar to the German Empire of 1871 to 1918. Since November 2021, the network is alleged to have been planning an attack on the Bundestag, as well as public arrests of politicians to cause public unrest. The Patriotic Union assumed that parts of the German security authorities would have shown solidarity with their effort. Well, based on this part up here, I'd agree. Which would have led to an overthrow, allowing the group to take power. The group is known to be right-wing and regularly promotes anti-Semitic ideology. We'll click the citation for that. The planned coup included a storming of the Reichstag, the German parliament building, inspired by the January... Oh my god. They couped the U.S. government!
Yeah, the Boomer Revolution.
The Boomer Revolution, indeed. This is very much... you can tell that they want to link monarchic and German Empire to right-wing anti-Semitic, right, Nazism. They want to, and January 6th, they want to link this together. So whenever you think German Empire monarchic government, you think anti-Semitic, right-wing, January 6th, which the right-wing is not wrong. That part is true, but the rest of this is all a hit piece. Investigations. You have a point to make?
No, continue on. I agree with all that.
German police authorities have been investigating the group since spring 2022. The group is made up of parts of the radicalized Quoidenken, I'm assuming, Royce was the starting point for the investigations. So you're telling me they just started looking in and spying on this prince with no, because they would have, if they wanted to investigate the organization, they'd have invested the organization, but they started with this guy and found out about the organization. Sounds like they were doing some possibly illegal investigations.
Yeah, this is just totally emergent phenomena, guys. This totally wasn't a planned operation.
Totally not. Like, and let us remember Jay Stark, who was making and teaching people how to make 3D printed guns, and then arrested by the German government, where he then died of a heart attack.
Mm-hmm. Oh, the convenient heart attack.
Yes, that definitely didn't look like cyanide. Like, you can tell this is the German government taking out political opponents.
Yeah, because honestly, I say this because they know their legitimacy is on a razor's edge. That
Of course.
they have to keep up the illusion that they are the legitimate German government, and because of that, they can't allow any oppositional language to come into the discourse. How dare you say that we are not the legitimate German government? In fact, it's even in their constitution that America wrote into them. It was like it's like a clause in their constitution that says that there can be no other constitution besides this one. And if you try to change it, that's illegal, essentially. I think it's called a perpetuity clause or something.
Which is sad because even the people who would eventually inspire this kind of ideology, like Thomas Jefferson, who wasn't totally wrong in his ideas. He actually had some good ideas. Like in the Declaration, he wrote that when a government is truly unjust, that the people must overthrow it. That he literally was saying, even for the United States, that people sometimes have to overthrow a government, but like this is total authoritarianism. And even if you look into, this isn't just like a, shutting down political opponents. This isn't just that. It's also showing, because this is like huge widespread news, and this is everywhere, and the, Der Spiegel, BBC, all the big sites are promoting this. This is meant to show that if you're right wing and you dislike the government, they will arrest you and throw you in jail, right? They'll throw you in prison for as long as they want because you're a political opponent. This is using the military as a show of force.
Well, it's not even the military. The military is on their side. They're
the special forces and the cops.
Yeah. Specifically the police special forces, because the GS9, they're specifically attached to the German federal police, not the KSK. The KSK is attached to the Bundeswehr.
They raided the KSK.
Right-wingers.
Yeah, they raided the KSK. This is also a systematic thing. Anyways, where were we? Right, Royce ended up being carried out by Federal Criminal Police, BKA, under the name Shadow. That doesn't sound ominous. In addition, several state criminal investigation officers and state authorities for the protection of the Constitution, that's, of course, like you were calling back to that clause, were involved. German authorities stated that, where did I go? That the coup had been planned since November 2021 and would have been a violent terroristic overthrow of the current government. Police had learned about them in April 2022 when they arrested members of the so-called United Patriots who were said to plan to abduct Karl Lauterbach. I'm assuming he's a left-wing politician in Germany. Federal Minister of Health. In September 2022, they started with a close monitoring of 52 suspects. So what I've taken from this is, first of all, what we've said previously, but it also is like as you read this, you realize there wasn't an actual coup attempt. They just arrested people. This was just a bust down. No, there's basically no crime committed. It was just, there were these people, they didn't like the government, we arrested them. There was no coup d'etat attempt.
Yep. I watched also a video years ago on when they discharged a quarter of the KSK, and it was some German minister, I forget his name, but he looked like a soy boy. I'm just going to say that. And he was saying it's like these people threatened the integrity of our Constitution. They have no belief in it. Why do they want, like, essentially, why are they in the government if they don't like the Constitution? It's like, that's because they love Germany. They don't love the Bundesrepublic. And they don't get that through their head. I mean, even Americans get that. Like, a lot of people who join the military, for instance, in the United States, don't love, like, the republic of which it stands. It's like, it's a myth. and we're not all fanatic defenders of it. We're like, I say this, everyone in the military is not an automaton. They're a person. Yes, there's a lot of automatons in the military, but there's a lot of people with critical thinking skills too that can actually formulate a political opinion. But
and people also forget that, people in the military are not under they are not sworn to the U.S. government. They're sworn to the Constitution. So they do not have to like the government. They just have to like the Constitution.
Mm-hmm. And even then, it's like the Constitution is a piece of paper, and it's kind of like what de Maistre said. It's like if you have a ideals-based government, it'll eventually decay, wither, and devour itself. And that's what America is. It's an ideological state.
Even Thomas Jefferson wasn't for the Constitution. He wanted that should the government become tyrannical, you overthrow it and start again. He has the idea, and I will say this is one of the greater ideas that he had, that in the course of human events, it becomes necessary for people to dissolve the political bonds which connect themselves, because governments will decay over time. It happens to every single government of every single type. Just some types do it quicker. They will eventually decay and need overthrowing and replacing. This is not supposed to be a one-time thing. This is supposed to be something that happens repeatedly, because then it will allow government to be fresh, allow people to actually get done what needs to be done. And that was one of the ideas that was actually good about it.
Yeah, my contention with that, though, is then you might get an Oliver Cromwell situation, which happens a lot of the times.
But what I've found so far is that those who deserve to be overthrown will be overthrown, and those who do not will not, because Oliver Cromwell died, his son sucked, and the British monarchy is still around today. They lost. So
God lets evil run its course in the end to remind the world of their decadency.
Of course. So. All right. Where were we? Around 3,000 police officers were involved. You don't need 3,000 cops to arrest 52 people. Involved in the operations to arrest the conspirators, who mainly came from the southern German states of Bavaria and Baden. See, they had to specify. They were from Bavaria.
Mm-hmm. But Bavaria constantly flirting with independence movements,
but also
and monarchist movements.
Yep, yeah, they had to be like, see, people in Bavaria don't want a monarchy, clearly. But also included the people from 9 other German states and in Austria and Italy. Among the people arrested were aristocrats, former MPs, as well as former and active members of the military. Vitalia B., the Russian life companion of Royce, through whom was able to secure interim financing from 3 Russian individuals, was also arrested. Frank Heppner, the celebrity chef, was also arrested on the 7th of December. It is alleged Heppner was commander in the group's military wing. Of 52 people, you can't have 52 commanders. I don't think that they're being truthful about the military wing.
I think they're doing it just to frame the dialectic. Yeah, they want people to be always looking at, look at these scary right wingers, and we can always show them in media. It was that White House Down film where literally they said, oh yeah, the guy raiding the White House is like a KKK, and he doesn't like black. It's you can't. Well, for one, media is always against the right wing. It has been. McCarthy was right. I'll say this: McCarthy was right about the leftist influence in Hollywood and media.
100%.
And he should have been given carte blanche, but he was destroyed by the institutions that hate us.
Of course. Anyways, he was in charge of recruitment, obtaining weapons, and building a secure communications system. Heppner would have also supplied the group's troops with food after the successful coup. They make it sound like they're going out on campaign.
Yeah, they're rallying the banners to the king or to the Prince Royce.
Honestly, it would have been cooler if this is how they actually describe it, but it's not. This is not how it was.
If it was tens of thousands of Germans marching on,
cool.
I labeled this Kapp Putsch 2.0 or Zwei in German. And I
Yeah.
relate this because it's like, this isn't a putsch. This isn't the Kapp Putsch, which the Kapp Putsch was done by monarchists in 1920 for context of the audience against the Weimar Republic. And it was led by Erhard, God, what's his last name? It's not coming to me. But it was led by an actual colonel, and it actually had men behind him, like a full brigade of
Well,
men.
yeah. And if you look at the parallels actually back to the 1920s, you'll find the significant kind of conservative monarchist movement that was wanting to dissolve the Weimar Republic and turn it back into the empire. You'll find that it was all colonels and commanders in the military. It was all soldiers,
And aristocrats, yeah.
And aristocrats. Yeah, this is the same people, except they've managed to pick the one random prince from middle of nowhere Germany to kind of be their I'm trying to think of the word, pariah. It's anyway.
And they're trying. The worst thing about this too is they're trying to frame it like he wanted to install himself as König or Kaiser, or for the audience, king or emperor in English, and of Germany. And it's like that's. I mean, I don't know if this is truthful or not. I mean, it would be kind of funny if he did, but I don't believe that. I believe he understands his place. I think he would just.
Yeah,
I think he'd be the facilitator if he actually was genuine about it, and not the one seizing power. He's not a Caesar.
Yeah, and I'd honestly believe if he was just some old man that they ripped out of his house because they just determined he'd be the scapegoat. Because he does not look like he knew what was going on when he was getting arrested.
Mm-hmm. He was wearing like a mask and just looked confused and just like an old man.
Yeah,
like, imagine
they just
if you're
found some
like
old man.
you're 71 years old and you're being taken away by the police. Like I'd be confused too.
Yeah. All right. Final paragraph of this main body. Conspirators plan to cooperate with Russia. No proof for that. But the public prosecutor general reported on December 7th, 2022, that from what they knew so far, Russia did not react positively to the request. A spokesperson from the Russian embassy in Berlin later denied any involvement, and on 8th of December, Dmitry Peskov issued a statement denying Kremlin's involvement in the failed coup d'etat, quote unquote. So they basically just want to throw in all the people they're mad at. They're like, you know what? We have a chance. We don't get too many of these. We'll just throw in, I don't know, Russia. They're involved somehow. Russia, monarchist knots. They're all in there.
Yeah, Russia's like the worm or the tentacles where all the evil of the world pours out from. It's
apparently it's just oh, and Russia was involved. That's how you get media attention. Russia did this.
Yeah.
So let's see the reactions. Within Germany, Interior Minister Nancy Faeser announced that authorities would respond with full force of the law against the enemies of democracy. So that's just a statement of political arrests. This is not to crime. This is just to people who disagree with democracy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
a flat-out attempt on an attack on monarchism.
Well, it's the golden calf in like Exodus, and these people are Moses, but Moses, instead of throwing the stone tablets down and crushing the evil, he's dragged down with the evil.
Unfortunately, it's and this is just plain attacks on just kind of anyone who disagrees with the German government. This is clearly just political in nature. It's not based off of any violence or crime.
I would say it's even idolatrous, because like Protestants go on about like idolatry, but they don't really know where to look. It's like when people make statements like we must crush the enemies of democracy, they are worshiping democracy like an idol.
Democracy has become, well, and if you look at U.S. elections, whenever you want to discredit your opponent, they're an enemy of democracy. They hate democracy. Democracy is the goal. They treat democracy as you would God. If you replace democracy with God, it sounds actual statement of war against enemies of God. For example, like let's say this is a monarchy, right? Germany's a monarchy, and this is the, herald of the king, would respond with the full force of the army, we'll say army, against the enemies of God, right?
Mm-hmm.
Our opponent is an enemy of God. He dislikes God, right? It's idolatry. if you can replace democracy with God and it sounds the same, it's idolatry.
Yep.
Let's see, international. Russia, yep, we read this already. Dmitry Peskov denied the Kremlin. There's our citation.
Oh, and of course the
And
United States chimes in.
Oh, you got to have the United States chiming in. White House Secretary.
It's our puppet regime.
Miss Pierre, who is very stupid, announced that the government of the United States was ready to help the German government combat extremism. So there's the U.S. attack on monarchism.
1945 all over again.
Of course. And let's see what this wants to link us to. German Revolution of 1918 to 1919. Kapp Putsch. Yep. The Spartacus. Yeah, that's what I thought. Spartacus uprising, insurrection by the Communist Party. They actually put that in. That's a surprise. Of course, Beer Hall Putsch by the Nazi Party.
Yep, always draw that parallel.
And the 20th of July plot, which was actually kind of interesting, but still.
I mean, it was a plot by monarchists against
monarchists against Nazis. I like how they put this in like it's a bad thing. But yeah, so this whole article is.
I technically like if they worship democracy, shouldn't they worship Hitler? I know that's kind of a low IQ take, but I mean, Hitler was elected.
When you could see like what they're putting in the related section is German Revolution, Kapp Putsch, Spartacus uprising, Beer Hall Putsch, 20th July plot. It's so very clearly meant to link this with Nazi. I mean, two of them are Nazi, plus the Kapp Putsch, plus the German Revolution, and finally just this throw in to seem unbiased, but literally most of these are right-wing, given not this one, but still it's just ridiculous how they're trying to link this to Nazism.
Well, it's the zeitgeist that informs our era was World War II, and they still are captured in that frame that everything, if you dare drift to the left, you're going to bring back this evil called Hitler, essentially. And they can't escape that frame of mind because, well, for one, like the Cold War isn't their zeitgeist, because guess what? It was liberalism versus another left-wing ideology. So, and this was kind of like the last attempt of, and I mean, I don't call third positionism like truly right wing, but it's like the vestiges of a right wing resurgence in the world was crushed then.
Yeah, and it's clear that this whole article is a hit piece against monarchists and the Reichsbürger movement, which, speaking of Reichsbürger, this is kind of, we'll go through this one a bit quicker, but this one's just kind of a general historical, kind of when the Reichsbürger movement was actually more of a historical movement during, after World War I, before World War II. So going through here, it's mostly talking about, yep, here it is. I bet this was edited even recently, is conspiracy theories, anti-Semitism, and racism, neo-Nazi in character, and draw ridicule even from neo-Nazis. So, and many supporters are also monarchists who support. See, they do that again. It's conspiracy theories, anti-Semitism, racism, neo-Nazis, German Empire. It's all putting it together to look like it's all the same thing. Neo-Nazi, blah, blah, blah. Basically just using all this historical revisionism. This whole thing is just meant to, this whole thing's just kind of meant to be, yep, there's a whole section on anti-Semitism. This whole thing's just another hit piece. Yep, they're going to attach the German Empire flag to the Nazis, of course. Can't do that. Can't do anything in Germany without doing that. Like, this whole thing is meant to be just another piece of really this article, just to, discredit Reichsbürgers and monarchism in general.
Well, yeah, anything that's right-wing, illegitimate. Anything that's liberal is legitimate. And I mean, that's kind of what the Enlightenment kind of was about too. Like, you read many of these Enlightenment philosophers, and it's essentially saying that liberalism is essentially the default of humanity, which it never was.
No, never. Based on the human hierarchical structure of even the family, monarchism is the standard.
And it's like, why in every civilization are there always, like, say, a merchant caste, a peasant caste, a warrior caste, and a priestly caste consistently? why are these things consistent amongst all of humanity, but we try to deny it? We try to deny basic human nature.
Yeah, while cultures are different in every part of the world, there are a couple of things that develop in every culture. Bladed weaponry, beer or fermented alcohol in general, bread, and monarchism. Every
Mm-hmm.
single part of the world at one point has been controlled by a monarch.
Yep.
It's been unchanged since early human history. Tribes had chiefs, kings, kingdoms, princes, principalities, emperors, empires. Every part of the world has had a monarchy. It's the human standard, the Enlightenment, and this is kind of the big point of this podcast, of your channel, of everything. The Enlightenment was a failure and one of the worst steps in human history.
Mm-hmm. And I say it wasn't even just a failure, but it was a deliberate evil. It was Luciferian in nature. I say Luciferian because I don't say satanic, because satanic is very specific, but Luciferian, where you believe you can put yourself above God,
Yeah,
that is the Enlightenment.
plus most Satanists, anyways, nowadays are most of them joking, not realizing that they can incur serious consequence from being Satanists. But yeah, the whole thing was Luciferian. It was anti-godly, anti-Christ-like, and an overall attack on human tradition and nature.
Mm-hmm.
And then finally, we can just review an article written by BBC, the most trustworthy news source in the UK. So, firstly, we have guys with masks, polizei everywhere. Got to make sure you keep them covered up. And then the prince. So,
Mm-hmm.
25 people have been arrested in raids across Germany on suspicion of plotting to overthrow the government. The group of far-right and ex-military figures are said to have prepared for a day X to storm the Reichstag parliament building and seize power. The man named Heinrich the 13th from an old aristocratic family, gotta throw that in there, is alleged.
Technically, aristocratic is wrong. It would be because aristocratic is meant for like counts and barons, etc. But if
Princely
he came
family.
from, yeah, he came from an actual ruling principality. Like it used to be independent.
Yes.
And they were sovereigns, so it'd be a
He's the
ruling
equivalent of,
principality.
he's the equivalent of, say, the Prince of Liechtenstein. Like,
Mm-hmm.
he is.
Technically, there's a German word specifically for a ruling prince, which is called a Fürst. F, the special U in German with the two dots on top,
Umlaut.
RST.
Fürst, yeah. Continuing, is alleged to have been central to their plans. Firstly, notice, as we were talking about earlier, he does not know what the hell's going on. And these guys don't exactly look pleased to see him. Let's see.
Honestly, knowing most police, they probably don't want to do this.
Yeah.
Just saying.
I mean, this guy just looks like any old man. He's got a shirt, he's got a plaid blazer. He was probably just hanging out in his house and got arrested.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
According to federal prosecutors, he is one of the 2 alleged ringleaders among those arrested across 11 German states. This was a nationwide attack. The plotters are said to have included members of the extremist Reichsbürger movement, Citizens of the Reich, which just means empire, movement, which has long been in the sights of, and we must clarify, in case someone on this is going to take this out of context, Reich does not mean right-wing German government. It means empire or kingdom. It does not
or
actually
realm.
Or realm. It does not just refer to the Third Reich of the Nazis.
Mm-hmm. I mean, just for a little etymology for the audience, Reich in German, like say the term for a kingdom in Germany is Königsreich, or the king's realm. So Reich can be used in many different ways, but mostly it's used for realm, but it's also used for empire too. So
yeah, and most people know the Third Reich, but the 2 other Reichs, 2/3 of these Reichs, the first was the Holy Roman Empire, and the second was the German Empire. So these are not Naziist ideals. The Reich is referring to the German Empire mostly.
Mm-hmm.
which has been in the sights of German police over violent attacks and racist anti-Semitic conspiracy theories. I don't think belief, even if beliefs are wrong, they should not be a reason to arrest someone. They also refuse to recognize the modern German state. Very, very based.
Mm-hmm. If you recognize the modern German state, you are a political enemy to the right wing.
Of course. Other suspects came from the QAnon movement who believe their country is in the hands of a mythical deep state involving secret powers, pulling the political strings. I mean, are there not people who are behind the scenes making decisions? I don't think that's too far off of an idea. I mean, we know of political intrigue. That's a thing. It's not too far off to say that the government is influenced by forces not elected. That's not a surprise. Everyone knows that. Even the most, strong adherents to democracy know that.
I mean, this term "deep state" also does come from Turkey, actually, because Ataturk himself established a deep state to keep his republic, essentially, which was mostly made up of military personnel and officers.
Yeah.
And that's why there's, I think 7 coups d'etats before Erdogan or something.
Yeah. All right, so back to this lady. Minister Nancy Faeser assured Germans that authorities would respond, yep, here we are to this quote again, against enemies of democracy. And you say it's not the deep state.
Yep.
The Reichsbürger group aren't new. They predate the pandemic, but this is an audacious plot indicates increased commitment and radicalization, which could go hand in hand with the growth of pandemic disinformation. That's what they're worried about. Even if this was a real coup, they're worried about pandemic disinformation, which I don't even think I think misinformation is a word. But continuing.
Well, they choose it because it's a scary word for most people.
Well, of course.
I mean, as I said, yeah, because you don't want to be they want you to believe that you're always being told the truth. They want the public to think that, so that way they can propagandize them. I mean, I think there's also somebody who responded to the idea of universal education and saying, like, oh, you just want everybody to be able to read so that way you can propagandize them.
Okay. The plot to kidnap the German health minister, masterminded by a gang linked to these people back in April, is the first indication this has strong ties with COVID-19 conspiracy movements. Let us look up the German health minister, why don't we? I have a feeling.
I hope it's a fat lady.
Oh, it's this card from earlier. No, you know what's even better? The Dutch. I think it was Dutch or Danish health minister. Yep, this lady. Health minister.
I love our politics in the West.
It's so interesting.
I hope the history books honestly laugh at this era.
I hope so, because we live in a clown world. Telegram groups, the greatest of Nazi concentration, related to citizens of the Reich, shows an interest in conspiracy theories suggesting that COVID-19 and vaccines are part of sinister plots to control populations.
Of course.
I mean, it's quite literally forcing people everywhere to get shots. Yeah, it's to control populations. That's not even an arguable thing. It's quite literally seeing if they can stretch their muscle and force people to do something, even as little as getting a vaccine.
Yep.
There's disinformation about the war in Ukraine and posts, too, about QAnon, the sprawling U.S. conspiracy theory that has links to the riots in Capitol Hill on January 6th. Got to link that one, too. They post in support of the Sovereign Citizens Movement, which at its heart believes that they are immune from government rules. That's okay. Ultimately, this group has co-opted a range of conspiracy beliefs that push the idea that evil cabals are looking to control our lives, and they've got to overthrow them. Is it so hard to believe for some people that there are people who do not share your interests, who are wealthy enough, rich enough to be able to push what they want? Is that such a hard thing for people to believe?
I keep on saying, like, I think it's like most sociologists put around like 80% of people have no critical thinking skills, only about 20%. So, and I believe that number is probably even lower, but most people will do what they're told at the end of the day by the media, by the regime. It's not even, if you question that, if you think everybody's a rational individual, I mean, that's just the Enlightenment blinding you to reality.
Mm-hmm. It might sound like a pretty outlandish plot to the average person, but it's emblematic, got to use the big word to sound smart, of something important. We've had warnings before about offline action linked to online disinformation and hate before. Anti-vaccine violence and riots at the Capitol, and that's not what that was about. It was not anti-vaccine in the slightest.
Mm-hmm.
But this is a reminder that even as the pandemic eases in some parts of the world, its conspiracy legacy remains, and it can embolden little-known fringe groups to take action in the real world.
Oh my God.
This just shows that they are attempting to push the Overton window, what the center truly is, what the neutral belief truly is toward liberalism and democracy.
Well, it's not to push the Overton window. It's to explicitly draw its borders and make it known to people even more. If you leave this, like, it's no longer if you leave these borders of the Overton window, you're just politically ostracized and nobody will think you're sane. Instead, now it's if you go out of these borders of political beliefs, you will be arrested. You will be persecuted.
Yeah, and it's also meant, like, this whole part above, like, this line here is meant to show people who believe in monarchism as crazy whack jobs, right? But, like, no, this is literally just a slander above this line. Now let's see what's below it. An estimated 50 men and women are said to have been part of the group, which allegedly plotted to overthrow the Republic and replace it with a new state modeled on the Germany of 1971, an empire called the Second Reich. Can't call it the German Empire, gotta call it Reich. We don't yet have a name for this group, said a spokeswoman for the Federal Prosecutor's Office. The Interior Minister said it was apparently made up for an organization called Council and a military arm. Gotta use big, scary words, right?
Yep, got it.
Wednesday's dawn raids are being described as one of the biggest anti-extremism operations in modern German history. 25 people. More people have been arrested in drug busts than this. 3,000 officers took part in 150 operations in 11 of Germany's 16 states, with 2 people arrested in Austria and Italy. Almost half
100.
of Europe.
I have to say this: 150 operations
for 25 people.
Yeah, that's Did they miss a lot of people? Did they fail?
My guess is like the raid on the KSK barracks. I'm assuming they just raided every property that these people had, and probably stole stuff.
Yeah, that's probably the case.
Yeah. All right. Almost half of the arrests took place in southern German states of Baden-Württemberg and Bavaria. More than 1 in 5 of the Reichsbürgers are thought to be based in the southwestern state of Baden-Württemberg alone. That sounds like it's linking to another thing that happened in Bavaria. It's like, oh, this is a southern German thing. I wonder what else happened in southern Germany, in Baden and, Bavaria.
I mean, it's not a secret that southern Germany is like the bastion of social conservatism, and Germany still kind of left.
Yeah, it's
mostly due to Catholicism, I will say.
Of course, which is very based, of course. All right, Justice Minister, we haven't heard from this guy, Marco Buschmann, that's a very weird name for a German, tweeted that a suspected...
No, that's common. Yeah, Bush is actually common.
Well, not Bush.
Marco. Oh, Marco. Yeah, that is.
That sounds like Italian.
Italian or Spaniard.
Yes. And suspected an armed attack on constitutional bodies was planned.
Oh, of course, constitutional as well.
Yep,
got to throw in
constitutional.
Well, the people in the German state, like those who are ideologically adhere to it, they do genuinely worship the constitution written by the United States that was imposed over them. It's like a conditioning, and it's a religious devotion to them. You see every single time they talk about it. It's insane.
Of course. Where were we? Pfizer said that the investigation would peer into the abyss of a terrorist threat from the Reichsbürger scene. Good lord. Abyss of terrorist threat from Reichsbürger. It's the connotation, man. They are making this out to be way worse than it was.
And like I'll bring this up, like the Cologne rapings in Germany. Like,
yeah,
it's like, that's actual terrorism. That's a foreign population doing terror against another by raping German women.
But don't you know, you can't ostracize the protected groups, or you might make them feel bad.
Mm-hmm. It's all about my feelings, and we must have guilt on our conscience at all times that we are evil, apparently. Even though, I'll say this: European civilization is superior.
Yep, I agree with that. All right, so who are the Reichsbürger? Let's see some claims. So-called citizens of the Reich reject Germany's modern democracy and refuse to pay taxes.
That is based.
True and based, yes. Once seen as harmless cranks, they are very active and pose a high level of danger, says BFV intelligence chief Thomas Haldenwang. So, high-level danger, 25 people. Got to make a decision. Last year, they numbered some 21K, but have since grown significantly. I'm not sure of that figure, but if it was, where were the other, 21K? Where were they?
It's kind of an open secret that I think it's amongst Gen Z, specifically in Germany, like 1/3 of them, when polled, said what they wanted the monarchy. So, and it grew from like, I think, 1 in 6 from the boomers to like 1 in 3 in Gen Z. So,
which is makes me happy, because I know that in Gen Z here in America, because I am one of them.
We are
both. There's definitely a large surge in conservatism, monarchism, and right wing. Like I literally took a time in class to just explain to my classmates the tenets of monarchism and the basic beliefs, and then they realized, that actually isn't a bad idea. I don't disagree with that. Because they realize it's not a bad idea. It's not. It's the brainwashing of the liberal state that teaches you that it's bad.
Mm-hmm. And I think a reason why Gen Z aren't idealists for this liberal system, what you kind of see is like even amongst the left wing of Gen Z, like they're not liberal idealists. They are radically different than liberals, is because we kind of lived through, like, what was our early childhood? Oh, it was the financial collapse. And we had to deal with parents losing jobs, parents doing 3 or 4 jobs just to maintain a life, having just to deal with less than like millennials and X and boomers had to deal with. And it kind of just showed us like the brutality of the world, and kind of the system is failing and crumbling.
Well, and I've seen so far in my life, the things I've seen from our democratic government have been, I became really, in my opinion, politically aware during the election of 2016. I remember I picked up a newspaper and it was about Trump v. Hillary, and I had no idea what it was about, and I started learning about it, and that's when I kind of became politically understanding and conscious. And since then, I've seen someone get into power, proceed to be attacked on all sides from the establishment, get thrown out of power, and then our government leave equipment, troops, and allies in the middle of Afghanistan with no friends. I've seen us make promises that we don't follow through on. I've seen, of course, the economic collapse of 2008. I've seen so many failings and not any successes of the system. But then I look to the nations of the past and I find successes everywhere. And it just shows that our system is degrading at a rate at which it can no longer survive. I do believe that within my lifetime, I will see a resurgence of monarchism, and I do believe that I will see a falling apart of one, if not many, governments that currently are in power.
Hmm. I think this, I forget which Croatian this was that said this quote, but he said it after the fall of Yugoslavia. He said that communism may break the body, but liberalism rots the soul. And
Yeah,
liberalism has rotted our soul. And Gen Z want an alternative, like whether that's through reactionary politics or that's through Marxism. Like those tend to be the where people go to in Gen Z. And the reactionary side actually are the competent ones. I'm just going to say that.
hmm
But like liberalism has rotted our entire civilization, and boomers just want to keep on drinking the Kool-Aid. Gen X, they're literally Gen X snarkers. They don't believe in any higher ideals for the most part. Millennials, they are the ideological children of the regime, and we are the byproducts, the nuclear waste and the residue that is left over because they used up all the resources that liberalism requires.
yeah.
To
I think actually that's the nuclear waste is actually a great analogy because we've built up over a long period of time, and now that we've been starting to be released into the public, into voting, into politics in general, we've now been kind of busting institutions and kind of like when a say when uranium degrades, neutrons start shooting out. We are shooting out and we are causing damage and changing things, and eventually something will degrade and fall apart. And that's, like I said, what I expect to see in my lifetime. I think it will happen.
mm-hmm. Yeah, I expect the collapse of the liberal world order in my lifetime. Whether it's I'm in my elderly years and I've advocated for it my entire life, and then I finally get to die in peace, or
Or when we're
hopefully a
young
bit
and we
sooner.
get to fight for it.
Yep, that we have a glorious king that we can fight and die for in God's name. You know.
Amen. Yes. Well, let's continue. 10% were thought to be violent, and anti-Semitism and conspiracy theories are widespread. That still means there's 2,000 people. You got 25. That that's not a
There,
lot.
there's 20,975 still at large, according to their figures.
Damn. Well, they've done a shit job if they mobilized 3,000 police. Federal prosecutor's office says that it was plotting a violent coup since November 2021, and the members of its Rat Council has since held regular meetings. They'd already established plans to rule Germany with departments covering health, justice, and foreign affairs. The prosecutor said members understood that they could only realize their goals by military means, violence, and against state representatives, which included carrying out killings. This just makes it sound like they were going to show up, start killing government officials, and changing shit, which
It,
I
it's
do
like
not.
It's like Jinro the anime,
Mm,
the right wing Death Squad anime.
yeah.
I don't know if everybody gets that.
Yeesh. Investigators are thought to have got wind of the group when they uncovered a kidnap plot last April involving a gang who called themselves the United Patriots. Unrelated to the Reichsburgers. Different
Hmm.
group. Anyway, they too were part of the Reichsburger scene. Were they? Were they really? And alleged to plan to abduct the health minister, Karl Lauterbach, while also creating civil war conditions to bring about the end to German democracy. I really wish that was true. I do. But it's not,
I,
and we know that.
I wish this was like as based as the
As they make it
journalism
out to
side of
be.
the.
Like, monarchist super soldiers fighting to destroy democracy. Yes. A
Gladly.
former far-right AFD member, see, this is also slander against the AFD, of the lower house of parliament, the Bundestag, is suspected of being part of the plot and of being lined up as the group's justice minister. Birgit Malsack-Winkelmann, who is among the 25 arrested, returned to her role as judge last year, and a court has since turned down her attempts to dislodge her. This is the minister who has been saying she's going to throw the full force of the law at anti-democratic movements.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's the SPD
Strong.
that's ruling right now. Like, I'm going to make this spiel before we move on a little bit. Like, the SPD ran this operation because they are the German government. And taking a look back at history, my great-great-grandfather referred the SPD as the German Traitor Party because every time they were given any power in Germany, they always stabbed it in the back. They overthrew Kaiser Wilhelm II as soon as they were introduced to the German government. Then they proceeded to run Weimar into the degenerate mess that it was, and essentially paved the way to legitimize people like Hitler, in all honesty.
Exactly. That's what that ended up doing.
Yeah. So the SPD has always done this, and they've always been the traitors of the German people since they've been incepted. And honestly, Bismarck should have just crushed them.
I agree. Prominent lawyer was penciled in to handle the group's foreign affairs, with 71-year-old Heinrich XIII as leader. Public prosecutor General Peter Frank said Heinrich was among suspects whom investigating judges had asked to be held in custody. Heinrich styles himself as a prince and comes from an old noble, family known as the House of Reuss, which ruled over parts of modern eastern state of Thuringia until 1918. Descendants still own a few castles, and Heinrich himself is said to have a hunting lodge at Bad Lobestein in Thuringia, I think. The rest of the family have long distanced themselves from the minor aristocrat, with one spokeswoman telling the local broadcaster MDR during the summer that Heinrich was at times confused man who had fallen for misconceptions fueled by conspiracy theories. Sounds like slander.
They will turn your family against you.
Of course.
They will.
I mean, look at even Nazi Germany. You reported your family if they were against the Reich. Look at Communist Germany. They reported you if you were against the German government. Same thing now. As well as a shadow government, the plotters allegedly had plans for a military arm run by the second leader, Rudiger from earlier. They believe to have made up an active force of members of the military. Officials believe they included ex-elite soldiers from special units, KSK from earlier. The aim of the military arm was to eliminate democratic bodies at the local level, prosecutors said. I wish. Rudiger von P., can't put his name apparently, is suspected of trying to recruit police officers in northern Germany and of having an eye on army barracks too. Bases in the state of Hesse, Baden-Württemberg, and Bavaria were all inspected for possible use after the government was overthrown.
This is where the 150 operations comes in.
That's what I was thinking. One of those under the investigation was said to be a member of the Special Commando Forces, the KSK, and the police searched his home and room at the Graf Zeppelin military base in Kahl, west of Stuttgart. Another suspect has been identified as Vitalia B., a Russian woman who was asked to approach Moscow on Heinrich's behalf. The Russian embassy in Berlin said in a statement that it did not maintain contact with representatives of terrorist groups and other illegal entities. Several violent attacks have been linked to Germany's far right in the recent years. In 2020, a 43-year-old man was shot dead 9 people of foreign origin in a western town of Hanau, and a Reichsbürger member was jailed for killing a policeman in 2016. How is this old man, this 43-year-old man, how is he related to the Reichsbürgers if he just shot people?
Yeah, no context, just he killed people, and killing people is bad.
He killed foreigners, which is, how much you want to bet that some of them had rape charges or had committed rape? Because it's in western town Hanau. That sounds similar to Cologne in what would have been happening.
And I would love to also know the age of these men, fighting age, Arabs possibly. Just suspecting.
The Reichsbürger movement is estimated to have as many as 21,000 followers, of whom 5%. Now 5% are on the extreme right. So this is all just kind of crap, and I think we can all agree this is a hit piece meant to discredit Heinrich and the entire Reichsbürger movement.
And I mean, I wish that the right wing was as powerful, as based as journalism.
As they describe it, yes. If it was as based as they described it, it would have been so much better. But it's not, which disappoints me. So, in conclusion, I think that this whole thing, all of the article, all of the Wikipedia pages, all of this coverage, the whole coup d'etat is a big bunch of nothing. just like January 6th. It's just a bunch of horse crap to scare people of the far right and to scare people of monarchism.
Mm-hmm. I second that position fully, and I mean I've kind of said my piece on a lot of these points. So, but yes, the Bundesrepublik, ever since its very inception, needed to make laws against any right wing movement, whether it was third positionist, whether it was monarchist. All of them were consecutively banned from the 1940s to today. And that's because in Germany, the Overton window is defined by the United States foreign policy, which I kind of say like it's the State Department empire.
Yeah,
And
it definitely follows.
and that's why like what's her name, that our speaker
Merkel?
lady.
Oh,
No,
ours? Nancy Pelosi.
no, I'm talking like the speaker, the White House press secretary.
Oh, yeah, I know. Pierre something.
Yeah, I mean that's why she chimed in, because Germany is a vassal country to the United States empire.
It
And
absolutely is.
yeah, and I would like to say, like, imagine if, pose a scenario, if this actually happened, would the United States act against this new German state? I think that they would, if this was
I do as well.
legitimate.
And I mean, one quote that I always like to remember when covering things like this is, do not attribute to malice what you can attribute to incompetence, or I think it's sometimes phrased as ignorance. But this is clearly a malicious attempt against. This was not an accident. This was not, none of this was accidental. This was a clear attack on monarchism and the right in Germany.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and like I'm just not surprised. Because I've seen this. Like 2017, I think, was when the KSK, like a quarter of them were discharged, and several arrested. And then you look back, it's like the 1970s. Like they disbanded they had like a more Third Reich-esque eagle on, like, as their party symbol, and they were like vaguely Natsock, but it's like they're not allowed, because apparently in a democracy you don't allow people to run for office.
In democracy, you don't allow people to fly flags that you disagree with.
Yes, that too. Democracy apparently isn't ruled by the demos. It's ruled by the center right and center left against everyone else. Which I have a term for this. It is the tyranny of the bourgeoisie, the tyranny of the third estate. Because ever since all these revolutions are always supported by men of the third estate, like say merchants, bankers, lawyers, intellectuals,
Of course.
and it's yeah. I mean, I know I'm a Catholic, but I do kind of like this view from Evola that about the First World War, where how you could kind of see it as the third estate crushing the second estate. That Germany, Austria, and Russia were symbols of the old vestiges of the second estate, and the third estate, symbolized in America, France, and Britain, went out to crush them, and they did.
Yes. And I think a great thing to, when it comes to modern democracy, to refer to is the writings by Doctor of the Church, St. Thomas Aquinas, De Regnum ad Regem Cyprii, the On Kingship to the King of Cyprus. He discusses why monarchism is and I think that you should link this book because it's actually really good. But it describes the Catholic view on monarchism and why it is the correct ideology. And in this book, St. Thomas, he basically says that there are 6 forms that a government can take. 3 of them good and Christ-like and Catholic, and 3 Luciferian, satanic, and evil. Each of them a mirror of the other. So they are, in the worst of worst, is what is a mob, an anarchy, basically an evil rule of the people. It is, and I think democracy can be in that group, but it is basically the rule of the people, and it is Luciferian in nature. Secondly, is an oligarchy. a rule by the few, satanic, Luciferian in nature, which I think is truly what we have. I don't think we have democracy. I think we have oligarchy. And thirdly is a tyranny, rule by one, satanic, Luciferian, evil. Then on the other side, the good mirror to mob and anarchy is a quote-unquote democracy, but he also still thinks that this is on the same level as an oligarchy or a mob or a tyranny. It is just as bad because most people are dumb, and most people he uses the example of a ship. You don't vote on the ship's captain when you're heading for an iceberg. The captain makes the decisions, not the crew. Following would the equivalent to an oligarchy would be an aristocracy, a rule by the elite, but the Catholic, the Christ-like elite. And finally, what St. Thomas believes to be the pinnacle of human government on earth, the closest we can get to heaven while we are here, a monarchy, ruled by a Catholic king in service to the Catholic God. And he makes this point, and I think it is important that we realize that no matter what we call it, a democracy, an oligarchy, an anarchy, a mob, a tyranny, it is all Luciferian, evil, Satanist in nature. And truly, the most important thing we can do is return to Catholic monarchy and follow the example set by those monarchs of past and St. Thomas.
Yes, and I mean, this is why I say all people should honestly do research on the Catholic monarchs. Like I went to mass one day, and of course it was like the after hours, and we started talking, and I forget how it brought it up, but I mentioned Queen Isabella of Spain, and I mentioned it's like, oh yeah, she was the great, because it was on the conversion of Latin America. That's it. And I was telling this to this woman who had no idea who Isabella of Spain was. And I was like, well, she was the great Catholic Queen of Spain that sponsored Columbus to go sail out and find the new worlds, so that way the Spaniards could go convert them to Catholicism. Like, it was her mission first to convert everyone in the world to Catholicism, not to expand the glory of Spain. And I mean, it just never dawns on many Catholics, many faithful, to actually know our history, to actually know our great heroes, people that we can look up to, the great saints and martyrs. And I mean, we are an intellectual faith. Like Charles Coulomb says that about it, and I honestly agree. And we need to foster that again. We need to foster actually understanding our faith, actually understanding the men of the past who defended it against all foreign evils, and to make sure that the forces of hell would never prevail against the church.
Of course. Here, I'm trying to find a good kind of cover image of De Regno that I may show off, but this part has my address in it, so I can't show that on stream. Here we are. Oh, okay. So this, I think I'll send you the Amazon link and you can link it below, but De Regno, St. Thomas Aquinas, it's a great book, describes monarchism in the perfect way, and it's the perfect conversion tool for monarchism as the catechism is for Catholicism. I think it is. I think it should be considered the basis of Catholic monarchism, as it's just an amazing read. And it's not too long. I mean, half the book's in Latin, and it's only about 120 pages of reading.
Yeah. Also, for the audience, I will also post another link to a book that I highly recommend for people who want to know more about this topic. It's called The Innocence of Kaiser Wilhelm II, it's actually a really easy read. And the historian that did essentially the apologetics for Wilhelm II to try to recover his image. I mean, he was an example of like one of the last true monarchs that the world has ever had. I mean, yes, we have monarchy still, but he was actually a monarch that both reigned and ruled and cared about his people. Same with Blessed Karl at the same time. And I mean, this is just more relating to the German monarchism specifically and knowledge of it. So I recommend that read as well. Short read, not really difficult prose to get into either.
Yeah. I think I might actually read that myself because I haven't yet. So I'll take a look at that.
Yeah, it's. I also recommend read the actual words of Wilhelm II himself. Like there are his published memoirs that you can purchase off of like Amazon and stuff. I'll post that link down too. But besides that, do you have anything else, Tradrator?
That's all for me. I just think that we should disregard this as any serious attempt on the German government, but show that it is really an attack on monarchism and the Reichsbürger movement. This is in no way an innocent event on the part of the German government.
Mm-hmm. Oh yes, and what Crusader 21 saying in the chat? Yes, Rip Nicholas II as well. Also another. Well, he's a saint in Orthodoxy as well, which I wish that Catholicism would recognize some Orthodox saints like Nicholas, but that's a whole nother discussion.
Indeed.
All right. Well, thank you all for watching. I much appreciate if you could hit that like button and subscribe. But otherwise, thank you, and we'll. I don't really have a good outro, so goodbye, people.
God bless and good night.